I'll never forget this. I was a neurology resident, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, but this memory is coming back to me now. I'm on call in the emergency department. I'm finishing up this note on the computer I had seen a consult on, and I see this young girl walk into the emergency room. I thought she was a girl, but she was a young woman, and she looked kind of lost, a little bit disoriented, and really scared. Like she looked afraid. And I thought, wow, that's a strange sight. And I just kind of considered it. And then I turned around to finish my note. The neurology attending ends up calling me for a consult on that young lady. And so I walk over there and I ask what's going on. And the other doctor is like, well, she's a little bit off and a little bit emotional, and I think she just needs a drug screen. I just wanted to make sure that there's nothing neurological going on. And so I start speaking to her, and she would intermittently burst into tears. And I also had noted uh, a very mild dysconjugate gaze. So that just means that your eyes are not moving in concert, they're not aligned. It's kind of like a lazy eye effect. Um, Her arms and her legs, she had strength, there was no weakness, but that mild dysconjugate gaze and also the emotional incontinence made me think, is this person having a stroke? And specifically, is it in the brainstem, which controls your eye movements and some other functions as well? And so I could not shake this feeling that there was something seriously wrong that we needed to address immediately. And so I'm telling the attending this. So this is the attending who was like 20 years older than me, overseeing the emergency department. And he says, no, this is unlikely. I think she's having emotional problems. She needs a drug screen. We didn't see anything on exam. Her head CT is okay. You just started your residency. I don't think so. And so then I move on and I call the radiology department because I wanted a more specialized scan to confirm my suspicion of stroke. The radiology attending also poo pooed what I was saying and just said, this is really unlikely. This story doesn't really add up to stroke. And then what I end up doing is I end up doubting myself. I end up second guessing my history, my physical exam, even my intuition, right? I second guess it all. And I think to myself, well, maybe she's not having a stroke. And then that leads to indecision. Now I can't even decide what to do with this patient. If I should just sign off on the case, or if I need to push harder and advocate for this patient. I just need help. So I end up calling for backup, and that backup is my own attending physician who's directly supervising me. So he's a neurologist. And I call him in his home. I wake him up. It's like 2 or 3 a.m. And I tell him the story from beginning to end. He gets out of bed, rushes to his car, and drives straight to the hospital to meet me there. He looks me in the eye and he says, you're absolutely right. I do believe this person is having a stroke and we need to act quickly. And so we activate a stroke code. And a stroke code, the whole point is to determine whether someone's having a stroke, but also to determine if that person is a candidate for a clot buster called TPA. And so we determine, based on my assessment and my attending's agreement with that assessment, that indeed this is suspicious for a stroke. The attending then advocates for more specialized scans, and advocation in that instance really just meant him yelling at other attending physicians to get going with this case. And he did that. They listened to his authority. We got a rapid MRI, and it did confirm damage to exactly where I suspected, which was the back of the brain, or the brain stem. We get something called a CTA to look at her blood vessels, and we find this big clot that is obstructing her basilar artery. The basilar artery is responsible for giving blood to the brainstem and the pons, the balance centers of the brain. If you block that artery, that is a ticking time bomb, and it just means that the person will die. This was a death sentence if we did not act quickly. And so it confirmed everything that I had said was going on in this patient, despite the indecision and the self doubt. I ended up ordering the clot buster from the pharmacy. I pushed the medication personally for this patient. And then we sent her to get that big goober out of her artery. And that's through interventional neuroradiology. So they did clot retrieval. I took care of her the rest of the hospital stay. We figured out why she even had all this clotting to begin with, and it ended up that she needed blood thinners. And she was able a week later to be discharged home with no disability. She walked out of the hospital with no emotional outbursts. And most importantly, she walked out of that hospital alive because we made a decision. And this is a prime example of how doubt can sabotage decision making. Self doubt is a symptom of you believing something that is not true. You may be believing for the best case scenario, like let's say you want to go out on a limb, a leap of faith, and start a business, start a ministry, go back to school. But then you start to hear all of these voices saying otherwise, that if you do that, you're wasting money, you're wasting your investment, it's not going to work, you will fail out of school, you don't have the qualifications. All of these voices may be coming from belief systems that you have heard or entertained in the past, or they may be coming from people. They may be coming from your family, your friends, even your mentors. I would challenge you that if you have a strong inclination to do something, if you see something that might serve another person and it's there, and you can't shake that feeling, to move forward and do that thing in faith, and to have a single mind, like tunnel vision, and disregard all of the noise that is saying otherwise. Instead of saying, what if this doesn't work out? Say to yourself, what if it does? What if I'm successful? What if I save a life? What if I save many lives because of my step of faith? There's a biblical correlation to my story about that young lady, and that's with Peter, who was sitting in the boat with other disciples, and they saw Jesus walking on water. That's a crazy sight. It's impossible, right? To see someone walking on water, but yet that is what they saw. Peter was the only one that asked Jesus, "Hey, if that's really you, ask me to come out of the boat and I'll meet you on the water." Jesus asked him, and Peter did just that. He steps out of the water and he does the impossible. He is walking on water towards Jesus. Now, Peter, being a human being and being an open sea, starts getting distracted with the circumstances around him. Those are the waves and the water, and if there's a storm going on, and he starts looking at all of these circumstances instead of looking at the end goal, the success, which is in Jesus. And if you do that, in real life, which we all do from time to time, what ends up happening is we are overwhelmed with the circumstances of life, the negativity of life, the naysayers that are coming from your mind or from people around you. It it overwhelms us with waves of doubt, and we end up sinking, and we don't end up advancing towards that goal and towards success or touching someone's life in a positive way. I challenge you to have tunnel vision. Sometimes tunnel vision can be life saving. If you have tunnel vision and only consider the possibility of success, the possibility of touching someone positively because of your walk of faith, then that shuts off all of the voices of doubt that threaten to overwhelm you so that you sink in this stagnation of doubt. Focus only single mindedly on what could happen positively if you step out in faith. That regulates the inferior parietal lobule, which is active in self doubt. It reduces the amygdala firing and reinforcing feelings of fear and anxiety. And now you're able to control yourself and walk towards your goal in faith.